This is the Average Guy Network, and you have found Home Gadget Geeks show number 624, recorded on September 26th, 2024. Here on Home Gadget Geeks, we cover all the favorite tech gadgets that find their way into your home. News, reviews, product updates, and conversation, all for the average tech guy. I'm your host, Jim Collison, broadcasting live from the AverageGuy.tv studios here in beautiful Bellevue, Nebraska. The heat has finally broken, although getting into the 80s this week a little bit, but I think this is it. I think we're done for the most part. Pretty tolerable, low humidity. We'll dip back into the 70s and 60s next week, of course. We'll post a show with some world-class show notes out there at the AverageGuy.tv. Big thanks to our Patreon subscribers. If you are a part of that Patreon team, and many of you are, thank you for doing that each and every month. If you want to join the Patreon team for 1 month or however long you want to do it, you can. We just have one $5 plan. Easy way to jump in, the AverageGuy.tv/Patreon. If you want to join me there, and a great way to kind of support the network. You know, another great way to support the network through the Amazon affiliate links that I have on the site and on the pages. If you aren't in if you're not in a post, a show post in particular, if you're going to purchase something on Amazon, I've got the disclaimer that's linked to the page. Just go to the AverageGuy.tv, click on that disclaimer. It'll take you right through. That's all you need to do. Appreciate you doing that. And many of you supported Marv last week. Thanks for getting that done. And if you want to jump back in it and you're doing it, reset the cookie, so to speak, just head over to the AverageGuy.tv. Before you do that, click on the links or the link on the front page, upper right-hand corner. Get that done. Big thanks for you guys doing that as well. Big thanks to Marv B, who joined me last week. A fun and interesting conversation. Marv, thanks for coming on. It's always good to be with him, and appreciate that as well. If you haven't heard 623, go back and listen to it. And then new format here. We're on Restream, second week on Restream. And if you haven't seen it yet, you can head out to just go out to my YouTube channel, either the recorded, which is the Average Guy TV, I think, or the edited version is just my name, Jim Collison, youtube.com/Jim Collison. I think get you there. We're trying a different format tonight. Typically I'd be full screen at this point, but I'm trying out kind of this with the show number at the bottom and the green around it. I don't know. Tell me what you think. Put it in the comments there on YouTube if you're watching it after the fact. Live folks can do that as well if you want to tell me if you like it or not. Available out there, and you can throw your comments out there. Appreciate that. So big thanks to Restream. I think we're going to stay here. I don't know if I'm going to try the other ones, just to be honest. This is working so well, I may just stay here. So it seems to be working out. Okay, last week I mentioned to you guys on the show with Marv that my Morrow Data Box, that's a box I've had, I think, since 2017. MORRODATA, Morrow Data. I'd had them on the show a while ago, right? However long ago 2017 was or so. And they, of course, gave me the box. And I showed it on the show last week. Oh, it's plugged in. I probably shouldn't do this. It's actually plugged in. It's a little Intel Nook. Put it on my desk because I was working on it. And it's as you know, it died on me. I went to move it the weekend before last week, and it just stopped working. Couldn't figure out why. I powered it down. It wouldn't come back on. I tried powering it on and on and on. Tried all kinds of tricks, holding the button, all kinds of different stuff. I even took it apart twice, trying to figure out, like, hey, how does this thing work? Why isn't this thing working? I unseated when I did some of the troubleshooting, I went in and unseated the memory. That's one of the Nook, you go and you say, hey, how do you troubleshoot a red light on a Intel Nook version this, right? And they're like, what, so I unseated the memory, actually ended up pulling a lot of the components. I took it apart a bunch of different times, could never really get it working. So after the show, so Friday, I put the podcast together. Didn't do much on it on Friday or even Saturday. I put the podcast together, and then I realized, oh no, there's a file that I was storing on that I need to get back because it's the security file that Christian gives me so I can upload to Maple Grove Partners. That's the way we do it. He gives me this file, put it somewhere locally here when I connect via FileZilla. No, FileZilla. There we go. That's the Italian version. FileZilla is the Italian version. When I attached that way, or I needed that file and it was on the box. I didn't have it anywhere else, which is kind of a backup failure. If it's only in one place, even if it's only on your backup, that's probably a failure, right? From that standpoint. Well, that's not true. It would have been locally if I would have had it. So I would have had it in at least two places. We know it really kind of needs to be in three. So I kind of need to rethink through this a little bit. So I spent some time thinking like, how am I going to get that file back? Well, I told you guys on the show, when I tried to go to the website, the Morrow Data website, and the Backblaze B2 bucket backup site, the stuff where the files are, the files looked weird. When I went in to just browse the files, they were all in this really weird format. And I thought, well, maybe that's just the way B2, I assumed that's the way B2 did their backups. And I was like, okay, so that seems kind of weird, but I didn't think about it. And as I got in there, I thought, you know what? That's actually the way Morrow Data does their data. It's not, I could see it. They have like a proprietary format they do for this cache drive that they use. And it's not, Justin had said in chat last week, yeah, I can see my files on my B2. Well, I couldn't see them without the Morrow Data software or the server itself. I needed to be able to get, I need to have that running to get it done. And then I think on Saturday morning, I remembered, I could just log into the website and see what I can get. And so sure enough, I logged into the Morrow Data site and I could see the data. It was there in the format that it was. Now, it was only the data that had been saved on the drive, and it was instances of stuff that was kind of the drive and what was in the cloud at the time. And so fortunately that file was there, and I grabbed it, pulled it down, got signed in, you got the podcast, came out on time. It was fine. This is early in the morning, by the way, on Saturday. So I went through Ask the Podcast Coach with Dave Jackson. We do that on Saturday morning, thinking, how much data do I really need? Right? What do I really need to keep on this box? It had stored a bunch of, and Tony's out there in chat talking about his pictures. He takes a lot of pictures. I don't keep a lot of pictures. But I do keep a lot of podcast files. And it was really interesting, so I started kind of thinking through, this would have been after Ask the Podcast Coach. Like, how many of these things do I actually need? Do I really need to keep all this? Do I need to keep every live version of the podcast? Do I need to keep every edited version video? Do I need to keep every edited version audio? And I wrestled with it a little bit, and I thought, okay, where else do I keep these? Well, YouTube, the live channel stores from like 275 on of the shows. So I got a good chunk of those. I've got all I have all of the edited audio since the very beginning. That sits over at Maple Grove Partners. I've loaded most of the both video large and the audio over to archive.org. It sits over there. And then there's a variety of hosting platforms that I send the audio to on a fairly regular basis. The MediaFire server that I have that serves the video large and the video small RSS feeds for the podcast. I have all those. They're all there. It's really in 4 or 5 different places, right? And so I kind of thought, you know what? I'm going to delete it. So in a moment on this is Saturday about noon, I'm like, I don't need this stuff anymore. Right. So I just go into the B2 backup, disconnect it from the Morrow Data Box, which I still wasn't running, but on the software I disconnected it and then just went through and cleared the backup. It was a weird feeling. It was weird to just start letting all those things go. These are files I've kept around for a long time, right? I've been building this for the last 13 years, all of them, all these files. Various forms, Rich's random podcast, some of those kinds of things out there. We talked about digital hoarding sometimes, although I don't know if I'd consider it that, to be honest with you. I mean, I didn't keep a lot of it. There's probably four terabytes of data in podcasts. So not a ton. I know people who have more, but it's more than most, right? From that standpoint. By the way, one of the things I talked about in the morning, or I talked about last Thursday, was using an application on my Mac, which I ended up using an application called Cloud Mounter. And it basically is just a little app you can put on. I gave it the B2 backup keys. It saw it, gave me access to it. Cloud Mounter. But then it was in the same format. It was in that same proprietary format as what I saw in the Morrow data, or on the B2 site, the Backblaze B2 site. So that didn't really help either. I ended up buying in their yearly plan. They had a 14-day free trial. So I sent them a note, said, hey, I'm not going to need this. I appreciate it. But it was a good way to mount to B2. I may use that again. Super easy on the Mac. There's a bunch of different applications to do that. Again, Cloud Mounter, if you need to try that. I did ping Christian and said, hey, can I get that file from you? I ended up not needing it because I was able to get it back. Then I deleted all those files. That was Saturday. Then I watched, I did my Saturday stuff, watched a couple football games, went to bed. Sunday morning, went to church, did my church stuff, and then came back home. And I thought, it was the afternoon. I did a little bit of some yard work, and I came in. It was warm. It's getting warm again. Came in. I thought, you know what? I'm going to give that box one more shot. Have you ever done that? Like, I was sitting on there. I was kind of thinking, okay, this thing's dead. It's never coming back. I'm just going to let it go, except I couldn't let it go. Right. Have you done that before? I don't know, 4 o'clock. I grabbed the box. What do I have to lose at this point? And by the way, I'd emailed Tony over at Morrow Data to say, hey, I need a little help with this. How do I do this? Whatever. So I took the box completely apart, took everything out, right? Stripped it down, there's a memory and there's a Wi-Fi card in there, some other things, Bluetooth, there's a Bluetooth card in there. Took it out of the box, look up underneath. There's a fan under there and there's a CMOS battery under there. Now the CMOS battery is on a wire. It's kind of taped over. I thought, yeah, Tony says in chat, he says, no offense, I'm only listening once. Yeah, I get it. But, I always had this thought, Tony, that I would somehow need these old shows to go back to, like, like Associated Press was going to call me and say, hey, can you give me a quote? And I was going to need to go back, or I don't know. In the early days of podcasting, we thought we had to keep everything. And it's probably not a bad idea. You can apply your pictures or people's movies or whatever to any of these things, right? So unseated the CMOS battery, plugged it back in, and plugged the unit in. All it was the motherboard and the unit, and the thing fired up. Marv, I'm talking about it right now. The Morrow Data Box fired right back up. Like, I saw the lights come on. The thing started. I'm like, oh my gosh, really? It was just the battery that was causing this. So I started plugging in. You know how you troubleshoot a PC, right? I started plugging in pieces one at a time, screwing stuff back together, unplugging it, plugging it back in, plugged the hard drive in, plugged in it to a monitor, and it came up. Like it has a monitor output and looks like a Linux screen, or like you're signing into UnRAID. Actually, it looks a lot like UnRAID when it boots up. So it came up on the screen. I thought, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? So I put the thing back together, worked perfectly, right? Worked perfectly. I was like, oh my gosh. And I immediately started having data deleting regret. I was like, oh my gosh, I did all of that for nothing. Like I could have fired. Listen, on Saturday afternoon, I deleted the B2 bucket. I mean, I don't do anything unless I'm going to overdo it. I could have left all that data there. I think I don't know why I do this, but I think one of my fatal flaws is I start going down this path and I'm just like, screw it. I'm just going to delete everything. I don't want to think about this. And I didn't need to. I could have let that data sit. It's not like it was costing me hundreds of dollars a minute to keep this data out there, or not even that, maybe pennies a day, right? It's $20 a month. I could have let that data sit. I could have been back as I was before. Box came up. I connected it. There's actually some data on the hard drive that I thought, well, I'll get it while I can. And then I thought, this is dumb. I've already committed to not ever having this data again, and I don't really need it. It's stuff I'd never use for the most part. But there was some regret kind of associated with it, kind of thinking through like, I should have kept it. No, I'm glad it's gone, whatever. Can remake it. It did get me thinking a little bit about the way we make data today. And I think it's a little bit different than data 10 years ago. I think some of the stuff we make today, maybe minus pictures, we're not really keeping movies anymore. Music is all streamable. We might be recording some TV, but we're not keeping it for the most part. It's just different, right? By the way, moved all the data that I did have or that I did need. I'm going to keep, I think I decided I'd keep everything from about 550 of this show to current. Might as well. Just to have it back up. And maybe I'll keep 100 and then delete the last 100 type deal. Keep it around. I've said this before and asked podcast coach, chances are my kids are never going to want this data. And the grandkids are definitely not going to listen to grandpa. If they do, they can go find it on YouTube or archive.org or some of those kinds of things. But I did move all the data over to UnRAID. We're going to talk about there in just a second because there's been some things I saw over there. One of the Ken says was all the data local on the Morrow Data Box, and you're pegging your upload now. No, so most of the data, 2/3 of the data was in the B2 backup, and 1/3 of it was on the Morrow Data Box. When I deleted all the data, I deleted it all, and I deleted the bucket, so it's gone. So even if the Morrow Data Box tried to access the bucket, it just failed at that point. I mean, I obliterated it, guys. It was, I don't know why I do that. Again, I didn't need to. I did not need. Some of you are in an absolute panic at the moment. You're like, oh no, I keep everything. I got everything, right? I don't let anything go. So some of you are in an absolute panic. So I moved. So what I have is on the UnRAID server, and I'm going to keep that running. That seems to be that's where I'm probably going to go. Like I said, we're going to talk about that here in just a second. But it did, so the box is up and running now. I can't really, I could put I'll probably replace the battery, and I might make it a Windows 11 box, do something with it at this point. I mean, it was given to me by Morrow Data for review purposes, and they just said they never wanted it back. And so I've kept it. I could do that. I think moving forward, I am going to continue to use UnRAID. I may back up those. I may back up the UnRAID server to a new B2 bucket. So I've got it in the cloud somewhere. But most of my documents that I need, scans, tax documents, some of those kinds of things, they live in they live in a OneDrive, and that's backed up to several PCs. That's in pretty good shape. Got a terabyte for the most part. Even without the subscription, I got enough there. I just don't need that much, I think all of that to say, and Uncle Marv said, get the Synology and back. I had the Synology. I'd kind of thought, Marv, that the Synology would be the trick because I could plug the Synology in, attach it to my B2 backup, and I would see the files. That was not the truth. The truth is I needed a Morrow Data Box to be able to see the files to make it work. The way they store them in B2, it's not like you would see them normally in, they're not just, it's a, I don't want to say encrypted, although it maybe is, but it was just not a standard file format that Morrow Data was using to store them on B2. I had to go through their interface or go through what they call a gateway, their gateway, which is the box, which wasn't working. So even if I would have bought a Synology that weekend and put it in, it wouldn't have worked. Will I go with the Synology? We talked about that last week, $250 for that box. Probably not. I'm going to go UnRAID from here on out and let that roll. I guess, I mean, even the UnRAID server is a little bit of an overkill for me at the moment. I have less than a terabyte of storage now that I need. The other stuff was just kind of fluff. Again, I don't keep a lot of, it was in a, I'm going to say, you could say proprietary. It was in a format I couldn't read. I could read it. I couldn't read it from the B2 side. I couldn't read it from the mount I was coming in with on B2. I could read it from the Morrow Data Box, and I could read it from their website. So I'm assuming it's got something. I could dig into this. It doesn't matter. I had been moving away from that box anyways, and had been thinking I'd been slowly moving some of my files over to the UnRAID box, and go with it that way. Yeah, no, Marv, I'm gonna go UnRAID, and I'll figure I may go B2 again. I may not. I may think through this a little bit, may try some other things. Kind of came to the conclusion, the stuff I back up's not that important. Now for some people it is. It absolutely is. And I totally get it. Right. I totally get it is. I don't know. At the end of the day, a week into this, I'm kind of like, I'm kind of glad that most of it, it's not gone. This is the crazy thing about it. If I needed to get it back, it's in other places today, right? It's either on YouTube, or it's at archive.org, or it's on my MediaFire. I got a personal MediaFire account where got a bunch of stuff out there. Some of the early stuff, 100 to 200, maybe a little sketchy. Those were terrible episodes anyways. Just to be honest. Not sure I'd go back to them anyways. So I don't know. It was an interesting, it was tough. It was hard for me. I thought, getting rid of anything for me is hard, but once it's gone, it was gone. It was dead to me. And I just moved on. Okay. This is not advice, right? I just wanted to update you, to say, let me just wrap up the story on this. I'm perfectly content with where I'm at today. I was able to get a few of the files. I had some software keys and some other things that I needed. I was able to get those. They don't take very much storage. I was able to get those off, get those back. I was able to get those set up. I've got them in another place. Like I said, I've got some storage over on OneDrive. I don't know. It's just funny. I obsess about these things sometimes, and then you never, I felt like, there were some things, especially with the internet today. Like there were some recipe backups, and you're like, if I need it again, I could just find it. It's somewhere else. And if it's not, I'll just have Chat GPT make it for me, kind of thing. I don't know. Again, minus pictures and some of those other kinds of really important files and stuff. I just was kind of like, I kind of got this feeling, a lot of this data lives in other places, or you think you have a need for it. No, I'm not going to say you. I thought I had a need for it. I'm not necessarily sure I need as much as I thought I needed, as far as backup goes. Love the backup space. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it. Listen, I don't, and I appreciate this, Marv. He says, I'm going to make a best practice to show about this. I won't use your name. Yeah, don't do that. I think, we're in some, hey, if this was business stuff that was important to me, Like these aren't files. I don't think we need 99% of the things we create. As I started going through some of that stuff that I had, I was like, do I really need to go back to something? Now, again, there's important stuff. Like don't get me wrong. I think there's less important things than we think in all of that. I think we always think we talk about this on Ask the Podcast Coach all the time. Oh yeah, I know somebody's going to want to go through this, or my family's going to want to have this. And you're like, do they? Are you sure? Is it really that, I've told this story before when right after my mom passed away, we went out for the funeral and she'd hidden boxes of pictures that she thought we were going to just love. I think. I don't know why she kept them. She never looked at them. She never pulled them out. I don't know why we never saw them. It was weird. And my mom was very transparent. It's not like she intentionally hid things from us, but we found these boxes of pictures. Maybe they were just piled up in stuff we'd never seen before. I don't know. We went through those pictures and we're literally, oh, this is fun. It was fun for about an hour. And then it started getting tiring. And then everybody was like, well, do you want these? Nah, what would I do with them? I don't know any of these people in this thing. Like, what would I do with this stuff? And, I'm talking to a bunch of home server people because this is a lot of you have come out of that. You've listened for a long time. And, you're thinking through, oh, no. Oh, no. Somebody's going to want that. I'm going to want that. Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I know you're telling yourself that. You're like, no, I got to have it. Right now, you are saying, Jim, you're crazy for saying something. This is crazy talk. I can't believe an old home server show guy would say you don't need the data. I don't think you need it. I don't think you need as much as you think you need, right? We collect it and we collect it and we collect it. Oh yeah, this is gonna be. Again, Marv, to your point, there's some business things we got to keep. There's some legal documents we need to keep. Yeah, totally. Tax stuff. You need to be able to keep that for 7 years. Although the IRS has it all. They do. You can get it from them. If you ever need a copy of your tax return, it's a little effort, but you can go in there and get it from them. They keep it. They don't keep all your sporting documentation. Some of those kinds of things. I still have drawers of tax stuff from 15 years ago that I haven't cleared out. I question some of all the things that we keep. Yeah, it just got me thinking about it. And again, I'm not telling you what to do. This is not a how-to thing. You back up what you want to. You put it in all the places that you want to. You make sure you're comfortable. Like you have to sleep at night, right? You have to kind of sleep at night. But I don't know. Some of the stuff, it felt pretty good to unload some of the stuff. Again, I can get it if I wanted to. If you're like, hey Jim, on show 263, you said I can get it. I know where it's at. I know how to find it today. Will it last forever? I don't know. Will it, Tony, this is funny. So Tony says, my daughter asked me this morning for a photo of her on the playground when she was 3. Boom. There it is. Awesome. If your kids are going to give you those kinds of requests to get them back, awesome. Keep it if that's what you feel like you need to do. Again, this is not a how-to. I'm just, for some of you, like you're keeping stuff. Maybe you don't need to. Maybe it's other places. My kids actually post all their own stuff. We've got actually our kids at 3 we still have paper pictures of them. We do go through them from time to time. It's good to have them, but I don't know. Again, I'm not telling you what to do. This isn't a how-to. I'm not telling you should delete anything or you should have less data or you should do less backing up. That's not what I'm telling you. I don't want you to hear that. I'm just saying for me, it was kind of freeing to get, some of the get from my own personal side of things. Again, I thought through it. Is it in other places? Yeah. It's in other places right now. Will it be in other places forever? No. Right. Eventually YouTube will maybe start deleting things, or we'll close my Morrow Data, or we'll close the MediaFire account and it won't be there anymore. Maybe those memories that live in our minds, those things that we remember, maybe if we don't even remember them correctly, it's yeah, I don't know, struggle with it. You can throw your comments, appreciate you guys' comments in chat, and you can throw your comments down in the YouTube comments if you want to about that. Just again, my experience, kind of thinking through like, yeah, I'm not so sure. Will I regret that decision? Probably at some point. It's kind of like that Xbox that you at some point you get this Xbox, right? Fill in the blank, whatever version it is. Or an old, for me, it was a Timex Sinclair 1000 that I had from the 80s. That thing sat around and sat around and sat around and sat around, and I moved it from place to place to place. Finally, one day I'm like, why am I moving this thing that I'm never going to look at? And I gave it away. I got rid of it, whatever, recycled it. Sure enough, a couple years later, you have this moment. You're like, it'd be fun to pull that Timex Sinclair 1000 out again and plug it back in. Would it? Yes, it would be, actually. It'd be fun for an hour. But you're not going to sit down and program on that thing. I'm not going to type on that crappy little membrane keyboard. I'm going to spend a half a day trying to figure out to get equipment to even get it to boot. If it even would the power supply still work? Do I still have the memory card for it? Do I have any way of, I imagine I could find some place on the internet to find some things, some helps for it. I think sometimes the memories of some of those things that we have are sweeter than they actually are. And sometimes I think it's okay for us, I'll use the Timex Sinclair 1000, to say, what a great memory that was. Those were the good times. And not reproduce it, not burn an afternoon. And you could, it's fun. It's fun to get those things running once, I get out the Nintendo Wii from time to time and we play some games on it. It gets put back. I may have had a connect and disconnect there. I don't know what's going on. So hopefully you guys can still hear me. It looks fine here. And Tony says, yeah, you're right. The only thing I truly care about are my pictures. The rest of it, meh. Yeah. For Tony, for you, your pictures are your thing, right? You'll pass those pictures on someday to your kids, and they'll care about some of them. They may not care about any of them, just to be honest with you. And, be ready for that. Be ready for that moment when they're not as excited. Yeah. You got this situation where you gave her a picture in the moment, but she probably wouldn't have go. If she would have had those files, she probably went and looked for himself. Maybe not. Right. I don't know. Everybody's different. Right. Those files are they have a shelf life for sure. Now, does it help you sleep at night? Does it help you knowing like, I've got them and I'm going to pass them down? Yeah. If that drives you, do it. It's awesome. Do everything you can to keep them. If keeping your podcast or if you rip movies, there's in a day like today, there's really no need to rip movies anymore. And there's some edge cases, some things you can't get a hold of, or some home movies might be one of those kinds of things too. Yeah, do it. I'm just not sure I'm going to do it anymore. It's interesting. Yeah. Ken says, reminds me of what Christian says about new operating systems. They need to be able to do more smarter things with data. And then he says, glad you feel lighter, not having the overhead of managing the data. You were smart to have the most important data elsewhere. Imagine having the tax data in there. I'll be honest with you, Ken. I'm not even sure I need the tax data. Like, I think about it. Yeah, it's a good idea to have it. I could probably reproduce it if I needed to. If I was really in a bind, some of those things I could probably reproduce. And even if I couldn't, I don't do enough that it's like it's not worth thousands of dollars. It may not even be worth hundreds of dollars, just to be honest with you. Again, your mileage may vary, but I kind of think, yeah, I don't know, especially in the last 7 years. Amazon keeps track of all that stuff for me from a purchasing standpoint. I keep most of it there. Could go back. I'm having some work done. There's some contractor paperwork. Yeah, that may be stuff that's harder to reproduce. If I took a tax credit for some of those kinds of things. This is funny. Tony says next thing you'll know, he's going to start talking about getting rid of cables. Well, guess what? That's next on the list. I pulled out some boxes the other day, and I was like, why do I need VGA cables? Seriously. Now, maybe one or two. Do I need 15 of them? Do I need to have those around? So many of you are super angry at me at this point. I totally disagree. How dare you say things like this? Yeah, you're right. It's kind of crazy, but it's also kind of freeing to just kind of be like, and will I regret it? Probably. At some point, there'll be something that wish I could have got back that I can't. Guys, move on. We make mistakes, right? You could have had that on a piece of paper that burned, or you threw it away by mistake, or you got water damage. I'm not saying don't keep anything. You keep what helps you sleep at night. You back up what you're comfortable with. I just wanted to share my experience with you, so I appreciate you guys doing that. And again, if you got some comments around that, leave it in the comments there on YouTube, and I probably won't respond to. I might. You never know. I never know. Or you can always send me an email, jim@theaverageguy.tv. Okay, speaking of UnRAID, so I moved. I shouldn't say I moved over to UnRAID. I kind of did. I've had an UnRAID box, a newer box, up and running for a while, and I was chatting with John Biggs about it the other day. He was asking me some questions, and I just realized their pricing changed again. And, it had been, in the early years of UnRAID, I think I was running it for free, right? And then they put some device limitations on it, and it seemed like it was a one-time purchase. I couldn't even tell you what it was. $70 maybe, $50. I can't remember. I can't remember what it was. And hold on, just real quick. Tony says, my secondary monitor is still VGA. I have a bunch of VGA monitors too. So you keep what you need to keep, Tony. you listen, you do you have you got to live in your own world, right? And you get those things figured out. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm just telling you what I'm doing and clearing some stuff out. So the UnRAID licensing kind of changed, and it seemed for a while there was a period where it was a license, and it would be good indefinitely. I don't want to say lifetime, but it seemed like licensing was different. And then I went on the site recently, and I hadn't realized they changed the price again. I may be late to the game on this, but if I'm late, maybe a few of you are as well. And so their starter license now, $49 a year, by the way. This is the big change, right? Is they're guaranteeing free OS updates now for a year on all these. And so their starter license, and it really comes down to, for the most part, it comes down to the number of devices you plug in. And so the six devices, 6 hard drives six hard drives, $50, $109 now for unlimited per year. And then for those of you who own a lifetime license, many of you asked for those as well, $249. So you can do that. If you bought when I bought, they're honoring some of those prices, and they're now going with, I think I'm on basic. Yeah, I'm on the old basic plan. And if I wanted to upgrade to their plus, with let's see, is this right? Basic to plus upgrade, $59. Basic to pro, $99. And then they have a upgrade Unleash lifetime for $149. I want to say, don't take my word for it. You might want to log in. If you haven't done this in a while, log in and just see what your options are. I think they're gonna honor. I haven't dug into this a lot. They're gonna honor those licenses that we purchased. That won't be forever. Even though sometimes they say, oh yeah. No, it's never forever, right? If you want to, if you just want to stay where you're at, I think you can. If you want to jump in and do the lifetime, I think you can. But check it out. They've got the price calculations for you over on their website. Log in, sign in. If you haven't associated your license with your account, you can do that as well. I think they're being pretty great about it. So check it out. If you haven't looked at your UnRAID license in a while, it may be worth spending some time. Ken, we'll see you later. Might be worth spending a little time figuring some things. I know some folks go crazy about that. I think I'm just going to stay where I'm at. I have 6 devices. I probably won't move for a while. But UnRAID's doing some good stuff. At some point, I may upgrade to the year over year. I may go with the full right now at $150 for a lifetime Unleashed. I don't need Unleashed. That's the thing. I don't need an unlimited number of drives. I need 6. I barely need that after the story I just told you. Joe says that he bought an extra pro license just before the price change. So good on you, Joe, for keeping up with that. So if you haven't checked in with UnRAID in a while, get out there, check it. It caught me off guard a little bit, and I'm fine with it. But they have really done some cool things with their account management. So if you can tie it to an unraid.net account, I think you create, and then you associate your license key with it, and the website looks sharp. So if you haven't checked it out in a while, head over there and do that. All right, last thing before I let you guys go, I think I alluded to, I can't remember where I talked about this last, but I did some voice clone work on 11 Labs. If you haven't heard it yet, 11, just like the number, except it's spelled out ELEVEN labs.com. We've been talking about this on Ask the Podcast Coach on Saturdays. You can give them some audio. I think I'm on their $10 plan. They have a $5 and a $10 plan. It's actually really reasonable for what they're doing. And the goal was just kind of see where are we at from an AI standpoint of voice cloning. So I started with just loading some text in and playing with they have some voices that they've trained. They actually sound pretty good. They do pretty well. Here, let me give you an example. I think this is an example of some text that I wrote. I did an intro for a podcast at work. So that's what this is. They're all the same samples, so you can kind of tell them. And I think this is someone else talking like me. Here, have a listen to it. So that's someone else. I spoke it in, gave them the audio, then they had another voice speak it for me, which was pretty interesting. I think, let me play this next one for you. Let's just hear it, then I'll tell you what it is when we're done with it. Oh, you guys are still not hearing that? I thought, all right, hold on. Let's go back. I thought I had enabled that so that it was in silence. Okay. Well, let's hold on. Let me stop sharing it. I had tested that before we started, and you guys said you could hear it. So let me share it again. Oh, yeah, I got to put it on the screen. That's that helps. All right, let's go back. It's the here's the first sample. This is my recorded voice with another voice. This is an AI voice actor, so to speak, mimicking what I did.
Hello, friends. Jim Collison here, and thanks for listening, following, or subscribing to the Clifton Strengths podcast. Today, we're giving you a full episode of a special conversation with leadership expert Simon Sinek, featured in our Leading with Strengths podcast. Simon leads with ideation.
Okay, not bad for another voice, right? I mean, again, that was audio I played in. They call this voice to voice. Audio I played in and then said, do this in another voice, which is kind of interesting, right? Okay, the next one is a voice actor. We'll just call it that, an AI voice actor. But this is based on text. So have a listen to this.
Hello, friends. Jim Collison here, and thanks for listening, following, or subscribing to the Clifton Strengths podcast. Today, we're giving you a full episode of a special conversation with leadership expert Simon Sinek, featured in our Leading with Strengths podcast.
You hear the difference between the two? It's kind of interesting. Actually, I think the voice to voice as opposed to the text to voice, let's say speech to speech or text to speech. The speech to speech, the one where it gets the audio hints, is a little bit better, a little bit more fluid, a little bit more, just a little bit better. The text to speech, this can become important a little bit later. The text to speech with somebody else, not as good, but better than what I trained. So we'll hear that here in just a second. But kind of creepy, right? Not, it gets creepier. So then I did, here, listen to this sample and see how this sounds. Hello, friends. Jim Collison here, and thanks for listening, following, or subscribing to the Clifton Strengths podcast. Today, we're giving you a full episode of a special conversation with leadership expert Simon Sinek, featured in our Leading with Strengths podcast. Simon leads with ideation, futuristic. Okay, that's not me. That's some audio I played in of me, but I used the AI, my trained AI voice, to play that back. It's actually based on not very much audio, right? Which is kind of scary in some ways. It sounds pretty close. There's a few words and a few things that I say, like when I say the word podcast, I say that differently than it reproduces it for whatever reason. But it's pretty darn close. Actually, a version of that is going live on Monday to our Gallup audience. They don't know. They have no idea. In fact, I've played this at work several times for people, and they can't tell the difference between the two. It's so funny. I did an experiment. I played both the AI one and then actual version, me actually doing it. And I said, okay, which one's AI? And they thought about it. They gave me one. And I said, what if they're both AI? You could see a worried look on their face, right? And it's like, oh my God, they're both? Now they weren't, but they were super close. And let me take a step back. This is now a fully trained version, but text to speech. And it kind of took a step backwards. Listen to this. Jim Collison here, and thanks for listening, following, or subscribing to the Clifton Strengths podcast. Today, we're giving you a full episode of a special conversation with leadership expert Simon Sinek, featured in our Leading with Strengths podcast. Simon leads with ideation, futuristic, strategic communication, and did you hear how fast it was? And okay, the voice is there, but it's a little rushed, right? Jim Collison here, and thanks for listening, following, or subscribing to the Clifton Strengths podcast. Today, we're giving you a full episode of a special conversation with. There's a breath there, which is kind of interesting, right? You can kind of hear a little breath in there, but it sounds a little robotic, right? I messed around. There's some settings in 11 Labs that you can mess around with, and I moved some of the dials around. Doesn't matter how I moved them. This is not a how-to. I'm just sharing this with you. But listen to this version. This is yeah. Brian says you can tell it isn't 100%, but it's close. If I didn't tell you this was AI, it's completely different when I'm telling you it is versus when maybe you're hearing it for the first time. Now, I was playing this for Sarah. This version I was playing for Sarah, and she said stop. So listen to this. This is creepy. Jim Collison here, and thanks for listening, following, or subscribing to the Clifton Strengths podcast. Today, we're giving you a full episode of a special conversation with leadership expert Simon Sinek, featured in our Leading with Strengths podcast. Simon leads with, did you hear that? Podcast. I don't know what accent that is, but podcast. Again, this is the same model, tweaked 4 different ways. Here, listen to this. Listen to this. Jim Collison here, and thanks for listening, following, or subscribing to the Clifton Strengths podcast. Today, we're giving you a full episode of a special conversation with leadership expert Simon Sinek, featured in our Leading with Strengths podcast. Yeah, a little bit better, right? Here, listen to this one. Jim Collison here, and thanks for listening, following, or subscribing to the Clifton Strengths podcast. Today, we're giving you a full episode of a special conversation with leadership expert Simon Sinek, featured in our Leading with Strengths podcast. Simon leads with ideation, futuristic, strategic. It sounds like I'm in a hurry, right? Like, okay, I just want to get the words out, right? That one. I think of the 4, this is the best. Jim Collison here, and thanks for listening, following, or subscribing to the Clifton Strengths podcast. Today, we're giving you a full episode of a special conversation with leadership expert Simon Sinek, featured in our Leading with Strengths podcast. Simon leads with ideation, futuristic, strategic communication. Now, it's a little fast in the reading, but yeah, it's interesting. 2 hours of audio that I've put into the model. I'm going to need to do some more work on the model. It's pretty good, guys. Yeah, this is, well, and so Brian says that one you played before, this one sounds like you, but most scripted. They all come from the script. I think this is the one I used. Hello, friends. Jim Collison here, and thanks for listening, following, or subscribing to the Clifton Strengths podcast. The sound isn't great. Today, we're giving you a full episode of a special conversation with leadership expert Simon Sinek. But the intonation featured in our Leading with Strengths podcast. Yeah. Simon leads with ideation, futuristic, strategic. That one nails it. The from a cadence perspective, it nails it. The sound isn't as good. It's a different model that I used, a different sound model that I used for that one than I used for the other ones. I need to tune the other ones a little bit better. This is getting scary good, guys. It's getting good. Like the goal of this for me is one, to be able to fix bad audio with the voiceover. Descript kind of does this. There's a service called Descript. Kind of does this today. But I'm kind of intrigued by this idea, one of if I recorded something and the audio, I liked what I said, but the audio is bad, I can just fix it or enhance it with an AI voice of my own. By the way, to do this in 11 Labs, I had to record something live for them. So I had to feed them some data, and then they said, okay, record this live. They're wanting to make sure it's me, right? That I'm not trying to mimic somebody else's voice. There's ways around that, but at least they're trying, right? They're trying to do some security things in place to make sure we're not creating kind of, we're mimicking other people's voices. We're doing it with my permission, right? So the end goal on this thing is, one, for me to be able to do really good. I'm not a good voiceover guy. I'm a better interviewer and, in the moment and live, I think, than I am voiceover, but I get asked to do voiceover from time to time. I'd like to be able to just write it out and then have a good quality voiceover AI model that does it for me. I may never tell them I'm doing that, but that would be awesome. Okay, that's not the primary reason. Actually, the real reason is that we're getting to the point where I could recreate this in Spanish or in Portuguese or in French or in Mandarin or Japanese. That could be a real benefit for what I do and the work I do. Not here, but at Gallup for sure. And just be able to create podcasts and content in other languages that way. That is my voice saying it. Interested in your feedback right now, real-time feedback. Is that disingenuous to use AI to create? If I would created some content in English to create an AI version of it, and not it would be translated, or the AI would translate it. We'd clean it up to make sure it's accurate, and then reproduce it in another language. Do you think that's just disingenuous? In my own voice, not somebody else's voice, but my voice speaking the Spanish, or my voice speaking the Japanese, or my voice speaking the French type deal. Not in real time. These should all be recorded things, but we create enough of this that may be able to create that content then in other languages. If I had a co-host, I would do the same with their voice, and maybe for some content recreate this stuff in another language. That would be super cool. I think eventually we'll have the translator that'll work in real time. So we may get to a point where that's not even needed. But I don't know. Your thoughts on that? 11 Labs, ELEVENLABS. Is that .com? .io. 11 Labs. Of course, it's .io. So 11labs.io. And I've got a little bit of work to do. It's just a cool. I was getting kind of. I'll be honest with you. I was getting a little bored with podcasting. Like, it's kind of easy to do now for the most part, except when you forget to share the screen, do your thing. This gives it a little more juice. Kind of interesting. I'm gonna follow these. I know this has been going on for a while. It's not new, but man, is it starting to get good. And there's some super cool. I think there's some super cool technologies ahead that may benefit us podcasters. Listen, I'll be honest. If a day came when I could do a podcast, and then because I move around on the mic, or the sound's not good, or I have some of those kinds of things, the script is kind of headed this way, and we may be closer to this than I think. But then run an AI filter over the top. That doesn't. You can use audio processing to change my vocal sound and eliminate some noise. But what if I could just feed that in and say that exactly the same way, except in my AI voice? That's perfect audio quality, and just fix it, or use that, use that AI voice to fix bad audio when it's bad. It's my voice. It's a copy of my voice. I don't know. Kind of interesting. We're a little bit farther than I thought we were on that one. So if you want to check it out, 11labs.io, and they do have some trial stuff if you want to give it a try. Kind of interesting, and kind of cool. I'm kind of excited about it as well. Well, guys, that's it for tonight. I hope I didn't freak you out too much on the storage thing. Check your UnRAID account, and I'll be excited about. This is my real voice, and this is my real. Wouldn't that be weird if I said to you, the audio and video you're listening to right now is completely AI generated? Would that not be freaky? It's not, or is it? I don't know. We may be coming to that day. Next week, Dan Lefebvre is joining us here on the show. He'll be spending a little time. He's got a Elgato teleprompter. And listen, I've been fighting teleprompters, the idea of a teleprompter forever. I don't know why I'm anti-teleprompter. I just don't like them. We're gonna talk about the Elgato one that he has. I'm gonna ask some questions about. There'll be some interesting things on there. Join us live. That's on the 3rd. We're already in October. And then October 10th, Uyghur is back. So we'll catch up with him. And I got Bob and Ryan on the schedule. Christian's back here first week of December. I got John Biggs scheduled now for the 19th of December. 14 years of Home Gadget Geeks coming up here on December 5th. And so the as like always, the schedule is filling up. And appreciate you coming out, listening live, and listening to me dialogue on this thing. Not as fun solo, but tonight I thought would be a good night to, spend a little time talking through these things. And I do notice when I do notice when I do these solo, I probably repeat myself more than I should. But it is what it is. We are live every Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern. Not every Thursday. Let's say 48 out of 52 Thursdays, 9 p.m. No, yeah, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern out here at the averageguy.tv/live. Want to thank you for coming out. For those of you, Brian, Tony, Ken, Joe. I saw Marv out there a little bit earlier. Marv, thanks for joining me last week. And it could be you. You could be, if you're listening to the podcast version of us, you could join us on Thursday night and influence, ask your questions and chat. I'd love to have you come over out here. Head out to the averageguy.tv/live. If you're listening if you're listening live, stay around for a little bit of a post show. With that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.